Hello, thank you for joining us today, everyone. My name is Nicole Galacci, and you have joined us on the CareersNOW mentorship session focused on human resources. We have three awesome speakers today that will tell you about their career story, their education, where they started out their career until the present day, and maybe a little bit about their current position in their current company. And we'll have a hard stop at 5 o'clock. We will take questions if you want to put those in the chat, and I'll ask the questions so that we don't have everyone off their mute. Kristen, Cynthia, and Janice, you'll stay on video if that's okay, and you can just mute in between. I should add, Janice is going to start us off because she has to run after her career story is shared. And I will say, I'm sure that if you have questions specifically for Janice, I can connect you, ask them afterwards and get the information you might need. So thank you again, and we'll get started. So Janice, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm very excited to be here, and thank you for the invite, Nicole. So my, career story, if I started at the beginning, out of university, I always, was just inclined to work in manufacturing, and started in manufacturing, not in food, in woodworking, which was a very different industry. And then I happened to come across an opportunity within food and got into a larger company with multiple facilities, and originally kind of got in under the health and safety umbrella. So I strongly encourage anybody trying to, just be open to any kind of opportunity, because it can take your career in so many different directions. I had some health and safety background from working in the woodworking with several accidents, and got my foot in the door with a very good company at the largest facility. And while kind of implementing some of the health and safety stuff, I became aware of some complexities with the workforce that, as I was down there trying to do stuff, and just started making recommendations in a unionized environment. And it just kind of led from there. It just kept growing and growing. I overtook the unionized stuff for the largest facility and did that for a couple of years, and with some changes, then was approached by my boss at the time to do basically replicate it in all the other 5 facilities. So great experience, and doing it in different locations with different backgrounds and a different diverse workforce. Really eye-opening, and doing kind of the same technical component, I would say, and implementing it, which is a very different skill set as well. I encourage anybody to try implementing it. It's not, it's not something I was fresh out of school. It's not what they teach in school, that's for sure. And then along the way, I think very early in, maybe 5 to 10 years into my career, that same organization had made a commitment to, some people to put through this performance program. And I started to get exposed to all areas of HR at a corporate level, and put in, what I would say are more salary function stuff, succession planning, total rewards programs, looking at pension, the whole gamut of stuff, and really making our mark there. And the company grew, and I started, being inquisitive. HR was great, but it's been 10 or 15 years now, and really got exposed because I was asking a lot of questions around mergers and acquisitions, and got a full different exposure from an HR perspective on acquiring a very, very large facility from one of the largest CPGs. So that was, a great experience and a great part of my career story. And then it, doesn't just end. We'd acquired it, and I spent 3 years probably doing essentially the same, putting in the safety program, all of the succession planning, and really trying to make this large CPG kind of fit into more of a medium-sized culture. And I was one of the only people coming from that culture. Everybody else was, from the new place we had acquired. So lots of exposure. And again, that wasn't that's not something I learned in HR school. It's just asking the right questions, being available, being around and wanting to learn. And it took off. Like that really escalated my career. At 2 different boards I was reporting to. And, it just kind of grew from there. And eventually, obviously, my title kept growing and became a VP for the one division of the company. And sadly, right before COVID, we had made a decision to focus on the newly acquired division. And this had been, 10 years of us running it. So we started to sell off some of our other locations. And I decided to leave that. And I am now VP of HR at La Roca Creative Cakes, doing really, really good stuff here. And it's really good having someone else, do it in a different organization and having somebody else really appreciate it, right? And say, this is exactly what we've been missing. And there's a huge, huge need right now for HR people and HR programs of everything I'm saying, not just, the tactical safety or labor relations stuff. Recruitment is massively a challenge right now. So, they're still getting exposed to new things daily, right? Even 20 years into your career, like I would have never thought I'd be, doing virtual career fairs, but it's happening, right? So always having an open mind and readiness to jump in and kind of embrace it all is very much helped me in my success grow. And yeah, so now I'm here doing that. And I guess you touched on education. So I have a university degree and then did the HR schooling at night while I was working out of my first job, and then got the CHRP and continually upgrade. I love webinars, love taking courses. I learned in my first organization, and I was so blessed to have him help me in this organization. But I partner our senior team with executive coaches as well to get a lot more development, not that, a webinar isn't great, but that really personalized development where they're literally watching you, your presentation, and giving you, some honest feedback afterwards. So constantly growing and developing. And now working here, we are actually the busiest we've ever been. Thank you to COVID. And, there's a huge supply of food demand, and there's a huge supply issue south of the border. So it's opened a lot of doors for Canadian companies that are really prepared for growth to start getting stuff south of the border. So it's been a great year here, a great ride. I just joined La Roca a year ago, and the growth we're experiencing is pretty insane. I mean, I thought it was busy when I acquired the largest coffee plant from Nestle, but this is busy. There's lots of opportunity, and there's lots of shortages out there and supply issues, and we're scooping right in. Getting very proactive and getting ahead of the people and getting that those contracts to win even more business. So again, another great growth story, hopefully, and more opportunity here, and definitely tons of opportunity within the food industry for several careers. I would say initially, I always struggled finding technical, like millwrights and electricians. Any young new grads, I would very much encourage to go to the food industry. It's not just millwrights, supply chain right now, even HR people, like all of these functions that are, hit with complexities of a global pandemic are in such a demand. And even our frontline supervision, like there's any kind of career you can imagine, from, accounting, supply chain, HR, millwright, sanitation, like there's such a vast array of, opportunities for any new grad within the food industry. Get a hold of one of these companies like mine. We're growing. We would love young talent that we can, help grow with us and fill these opportunities internally, right? To start learning our culture. So by the time we're hitting some of our growth milestones, we have those people, we have them in play, right? So that we can just, feed them into the next position that's open for them.
That's a great overview. Do you need to run now?
I feel sorry, I really cut it short. I can stay. No. I did write some time till 4:30.
Okay. Well, I was just going to ask, what's the typical day like for you? I mean, I know you're in HR, and right now bonkers, but what would a typical day look like for you?
I mean, now it's different too, because I'm very much only on site 2 days and off. So they differ, but generally I say in my hybrid work model now, my typical day on site is extremely packed, like extremely packed. And it's more touch points, right? Because I'm not here 5 days a week and I'm not here for all shifts. So, people see me and grab me, or, I'm talking with the plant manager. I really want some face-to-face time with my direct reports, not virtual. So we're all in the office on the same day. And it generally, you would start off in the morning. There's a production meeting that I don't generally go to, but my staff will be, and then I meet with them from there. And it's, kind of what are the crises overnight or the day before, like any discipline, that kind of stuff, or accidents. Other than that, it's a more kind of structured, what I would call standard work in the morning, where there's standard meetings where I would meet with the ops guys, my team. We just went live with a new HRIS and payroll system. So for the last year, that's part of my morning. There's an hour every morning with that. Whereas the afternoon is definitely left open more for project related stuff. So when people hit me throughout the day or when I'm on site, I'll just kind of mark it into the off-site day and work on the projects there. But recruitment right now is taking up a lot of my time. And I definitely am not the type of leader to cut interviews short, even if you can tell quickly. I just don't believe in it. I don't think it's fair to candidates. And we have an external reputation in the market as well. And I encourage that with all my direct reports too, because I was interviewing somebody for position A, and I reached out to her last month for a completely different position. And I knew when I was interviewing her, she would not work out. And I just kept going with almost like a curiosity of like, where's she coming from and what's her background? And it worked. We're offering her a completely different job, completely different. So yeah, I wouldn't sell candidates short either. So my typical day in the last 6 months, because of the growth, has been, the day-to-day in the morning, kind of like the crises to put out. And the afternoon is really the implementation of 2 new systems and recruitment.
How big is your team right now?
3.
So you have a lot on your desk, especially with recruitment, as you mentioned. Now, I know maybe you could talk a little bit I know your background, the difference from where you were and the types of products that your company were responsible for versus the wonderful La Rocca cakes, which I think everybody's knows well.
Yes. So I originally, the first company was woodworking, but then I think 4 years I went into Morris Lamoth. So Morris Lamoth, I'm sure everybody here has eaten our product. I can guarantee you have. Very, very large. It's very sad. Very large food manufacturing company within Ontario, specifically in GTA, 5 locations. So everything is frozen and everything. So there's one facility that was just kind of like a bakery, no meat. So fruit in pastries. So all of the apple pies at McDonald's across Canada are made out of that building. All of the McCain dessert pie, they're like the rectangular fried pie at, so McCain so you wouldn't know Morris Lamoth because we don't have our own brand. So we sold to McDonald's, we sold to Tim Hortons, we sold to Starbucks. That would be like our food service, kind of our QSR, we would call it, quick service restaurant division. We had brands like McCain. So we made McCain brands of the pies, and they would sell them into A&W, KFC, like all of those kind of places. That was one facility. Our largest facility had multiple lines and specialized in pastry and robed in protein. So we were the first to invent and commercialize microwavable dough. So if you ever got a Nestle Stouffer's pot pie that you could heat in the microwave, it came from that facility. Sausage rolls, we made every single sausage roll in the Canadian market when we left, including Maple Leafs. So under the Maple Leaf brand, and a ton of work for Loblaws under their private label. So all of the PC frozen stuff, you would have seen came out of there. And our one of our other manufacturing facilities was like an entree facility. So frozen dinners for M&Ms, for everything, and a lot of private label, not just Loblaws, Walmart, everywhere you can imagine. And then we had a facility that did pies, meat pies. So
I always think it's so fascinating because I think that's one of the misconceptions in the food industry, or at least students and grads often apply to roles with the larger brand names, the ones they're used to seeing on the grocery shelf, and there is just so many more that they wouldn't even know about, necessarily.
Yeah. Like we had one whole facility almost just for Nestle, and a humongous partnership with them. Like their developers would come in and partner with our developers and kind of join the two strategies of the company together, right? So any kind of, and towards the end, I mean, 20 years ago it wasn't, but there's a lot of, products shelf life isn't as long as it used to be, right? Things come in for one season and they're fad and they're not there next season. So a lot of development with products yearly, every year. And, when Loblaws did the whole World of Flavors thing that came out of there, Nestle, those fit bowls, everything. Like there's lots of products that are, co-manufactured. And then I had mentioned we acquired a plant that made coffee. So for almost 4 years in there, I oversaw the HR for coffee. Then this is back when, maybe in 07, 08, coffee wasn't as, trendy as it is now. So we kind of got in at the right time, and that plant just quadrupled. We have multiple locations from that one building, making tons of coffee, and commercialized the little, it's not Keurig, it's like a Keurig, the little compostable pods are all out of there. So partnered with University of Guelph to make compostable products. So all of those little K-cups aren't going into the landfill waste. So
yeah, so I know you have to run, and I want to honor that. So last question I'll ask you, what's the biggest misconception, do you think, about working in the food industry? It's one of the ones I come up against the most when I'm working with students and grads, that, I think everyone thinks hairnets, factories, and that low pay and all these other things. I won't fill your head, but, what do you think is the biggest misconception that you could perhaps debunk today?
I feel like exactly what you just said. I don't know what it is, or if people think it's low paid and not much opportunity. And it's so far from reality. So far. I mean, just in GTA alone, like there's so much food opportunity, like opportunity within the food industry, food manufacturing industry, tons, like you said, and people would have never known. Like I didn't know who Morrison Lamothe was, right? And I get this job and I'm like, oh my God, it's pretty cool, right? Like you're part of making food that people are putting on their table every day. It's pretty nice. It's definitely, and the other misconception is, I don't know if it's all manufacturing, but it's this misconception that it's very, like lower level, like, or blue collar work. And it's definitely not. It's definitely, there's very, very bright people. There's a lot of engineers within food, a lot of food scientists, a lot of extremely educated people, to make all of the food that we put in front of people every day, right?
I'm pretty recession proof. Everyone eats.
Yeah, definitely pretty recession proof. Yeah, even the desserts, right? It's insane. People are buying cakes right now, like, sitting at home eating cake. And I think anybody doing that, it's great. But yeah, it's a good place to be, right? I think for now and for the future, food is definitely a good place to be in.
Well, I appreciate it. We'll go over to Cynthia now. So I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're crazy busy, so thanks for doing this. And you're welcome to stay or just pop off whenever you need to leave. So okay. Thanks, Janice.
Thank you.
Cynthia, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, Janice gave us a great intro there into food and a lot of what the food industry has to offer. The first thing I'm going to piggyback off of is her comment on it being regression proof, which is actually how I got into food, or why I left automotive manufacturing. So that's where I first started my career off. So I guess I'll start with that. I was a student in university, and I actually was doing a science undergrad in psychology and had no idea what I was going to do with my life afterward. And it freaked me out. So I hit the pause button. I did a lot of networking and found an opportunity to take on an internship and shadow actually the president of this automotive manufacturing company. So he took me under his wing and let me, dabble in all areas. And I found a real fit in HR. Like, I loved it. So once I went back to school and I finished my undergrad degree, and once I was done that, I actually went back to that company and I started working in the HR role there as a generalist and taking school, night school, to finish my 9 courses. And then from there, I grew into, I guess, loving kind of manufacturing and all it had to offer. Like the comments that have already been made, for some reason, there's this, I guess, stereotypes around, blue collar jobs and what it might be like especially in automotive manufacturing. You think you're going to be like in this grungy, like not well lit, like oil everywhere, dirty place. But actually the reality is I've never been in a more high tech place with complete automation of all the lines. And it was so cool. There was robots whipping around. Like, there's not a lot of environments that have that opportunity. The smartest people I think I've met. And so it was a really, really neat area to be in. Unfortunately, once COVID hit, you could see that automotive manufacturing had taken a bit of a hit. People aren't buying cars as much as they were before, so things started to slow down. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, maybe it's time to like switch something up and do something cool. So luckily enough, I was approached and then taken into the food world, and now I work at Sargent Farms, and we are a poultry manufacturing firm. So same thing here. It is fast paced. It's super fun and never a dull moment. I think that's one thing I love about, HR. You might think that your day will be super routine and boring, and you're always recruiting and doing something that's related to labor relations. But no, I find that really every day is ever changing and continuous learning, which I love. The one thing I can, share with all of you is to come out to events like these, network, make connections. Don't feel shy to reach out to people. I feel like I can speak on behalf at this point with Janice and Kristen here. If someone were to ever reach out to us, we'd never not give them the time of day to at least give them a little piece of advice or put them on the right track as much as we can. In terms of, joining food and staying in food, it is, regression proof, as, everyone stated already. We're never not going to have to eat. Food must go on the table, right? Everyone has to eat. We all have to survive that way. So I think it's definitely something people should take into consideration. And as Janice's company is growing, Sargent Farms is as well. We've experienced a crazy amount of growth, even through COVID and everything that kind of has hit the world really hard right now. We're just steamrolling through it all. So food really is strong, and I highly recommend entering that area. And I don't know what the answer is to necessarily why food and beverage isn't considered, because I'm trying to think back to when I was a student. I didn't think about food and beverage either. I didn't. I think my head was largely in tech or wanting to just do like something cool. I don't know, whatever that was then. I thought that's where I wanted to go, but I fell into manufacturing, and I'm really glad that I did, because the opportunities that have presented themselves are unlike anywhere else I've heard other people progress through. You can progress really fast. Even in the 1 year that I've been with Sargent Farms, I've been promoted in that time. Our team has grown. We're 4 people, so it's really exciting, and I highly recommend taking a look into food and beverage if you haven't already.
It's funny you say that. I used since I started Food Grads 5 years ago, I would do school visits, and one of you, Janice, mentioned engineers, how many engineers are needed. And I went to an event at McMaster with about 200 engineers, and maybe 2 in the room had even considered food manufacturing as a place. And when, as a recruiter, when I have my recruiter hat on, and there are so many positions where an education background in engineering is a prerequisite. It's like many of the more senior positions on supply chain and plant management, it was like, we want somebody with an engineering background. So I really thought it was quite interesting that amongst 200, maybe 2 was like, oh yeah, I've thought about it. And I just said, why haven't you? And they said the same thing. It's not on their radar at all at school. And no one was bringing it to their attention, yet we all eat 3 times or more a day. Yeah, it's not considered as a career path, which I think is really fascinating. I have a bunch of questions for you, but what I'm going to do is go to Kristen, and then we'll have questions at the end, if that's okay. And then you can both answer them.
That sounds good.
Cool.
All right, can you guys hear me? Yes. All right. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to cover a little bit about my journey, and I'm going to try not to be too repetitive. I know I'm nodding along as I hear a lot of things that are being said so far. So hopefully not too repetitive, but my name is Kristen Hunt. I currently work at Unilever as a talent advisor, so in recruitment, and I've been in recruitment for the past 10 years. So I'm going to take you, this is my kind of, my path is a little bit of a roller coaster. I actually went to school for fine arts. So I graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts. So nothing related to HR whatsoever, nothing related to food or beverage. Going back to when I was 17 and going into university, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and kind of went the passion route. After 4 years of being in school, I knew I did not want to be an artist, and I started actually to get into I'll call it the business world. I started working for BMO in their call center, so it was very customer facing, and I realized I really enjoyed building my business acumen, learning about, at that time I was working in the mortgage department, so I found it super fascinating, loved talking to people, spent a few years there, and then I moved into a recruitment agency where I spent 8 years at a recruitment agency. So that was a bit of a hybrid role, sales and recruitment, working with a ton of different companies. And what I actually found, and hiring for a number of different roles, but I did spend time specializing in certain focus areas. So I was hiring a lot of sales reps. And when I got into that recruiting salespeople, I ended up working with a lot of manufacturing companies. So not specifically in food, but I found myself being really drawn to the manufacturing clients and companies and partnering with them. I found such an openness to just the people I was working with, the clients I was working with. I loved going on sites. I would go onto my client sites and they, come on, I'm going to take you on a tour. And it was so exciting. Again, talking about the technology, the equipment, having those aha moments. Oh, this is where this is made. And what I found was that these are companies that are producing something for another company. So again, it's not necessarily a brand name that people will know of. So how do we bring some exposure to those organizations? So anyways, I had a great career, but I ended up really sticking in and focusing, developing my relationships within the manufacturing sector. And then I moved to corporate. So I moved to Unilever. I started with Unilever about 2 years ago, and it's been a wild ride. I actually started December 2019, 3 months in recruitment, pure recruitment, corporate recruitment, and 3 months into that, we go into lockdown, we go into hiring freeze, we're not hiring anymore. Well, we're not hiring right now. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? My job is at risk. So I put my hand up for absolutely everything. And I think, I'm not sure who mentioned about kind of just the openness to try new things. I really said, who needs help where, specifically within HR. So I got to do some supporting our South African team with their recruitment, early careers recruitment. I got to jump into some HR projects, to kind of some of the compensation review projects as well. So that was great. And then I had an opportunity to support our manufacturing sites in Canada. So we have 2 production sites. We make ice cream at one and we make Hellmann's mayonnaise at the other. And at first I was very hesitant because I just wasn't sure, you know, it was blue collar recruitment as well. So I was kind of moving into more focused on blue collar recruitment. But I am so grateful I took the opportunity and jumped on that. I will say the experience has been amazing. We've been extremely busy. Once again, very recession proof, and I can attest to that. So, you know, even though we're in that, again, ice cream is kind of the big factory, and so being a dessert, it did not matter. The demand in the market has been insane, and we've actually been able to open up channels to get to produce for the US market as well. So again, that cross-border opportunity that COVID has provided us. So yeah, it's been a fantastic ride. And I will say the opportunity to work at the factory again, although my role is recruitment, I've had so much opportunity to jump into various HR projects, employee engagement projects, retention projects, you know, looking at a number of different things that I don't necessarily think I would have had the exposure had I been in a more, I'll say like more corporate, and I don't want to, you know, say any specific industries, but probably like if I think about banking, if I was a recruiter in banking, I would probably be very, very specialized and I would not have exposure. Whereas at the factory, it's like all hands on deck, we work as a team, and the visibility. I've had the opportunity to sit in front of our head of supply chain for Canada and present, you know, the work I've done. Again, an opportunity that I don't think necessarily comes about in some other industries. So really, really grateful for being able to spend time with our factories and help to recruit and hire people for those sites.
I think we have a very similar background in a way, and a hard moment with this industry, because I've been a recruiter for a while too. And I had the choice of working in the industry when I was recruiting. And to your point, I kept getting drawn to the people in food. Just there's no airs and graces. It's like, you know, you can speak to anyone in the company.
Absolutely.
Cynthia, feel free to jump in. We can have a sort of open discussion now. But yeah, would you say that you would agree with that? Whereas in the more corporate banking, like you mentioned, I don't know, I get the feeling that it's a little bit more formal. Maybe that's the right word. I don't know, but.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that as well. And I think when I go back to when I was working for the agency, and my colleagues maybe were working with, you know, the tech companies and whatnot, and some of their struggles with their clients, where my struggles were, I could pick up a phone, they'd answer my calls, we would have great conversations. I felt very comfortable to say, these are some of the challenges, let's brainstorm, work together on how we get to a specific outcome. And I could see my colleagues who maybe were supporting different industries, just, you know, feeling a little bit of that hitting your head against the wall, and you know, I can't get a hold of this person, or more of the formalities, I'll say.
Yeah, I think people in food industry, they like to feed people. There's no, you know, grandeur. It is what it is. I like that.
We had one of my colleagues who works as supply chain part of the corporate team. He came out to our Simcoe facility, and our Simcoe facility is a little ways out of Toronto, so it took him a while to actually get there, but he came out, he spent the day, he was really curious about, you know, the factory and what goes on here. So same company, but just had never been on site. And he went home with like 2 arms full bags of ice cream, and I'm like, you're not going to make it home before that melts, but good luck.
That's one of the best reasons to focus in the food industry. I don't think I ever went on an appointment and not leave with some product eating on the way home.
Exactly.
So I have a few.
Is great.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
discounted food. Can you imagine getting discounted chicken? It's great.
Well, this is it, right? And there are some of the perks with working in the industry, right? That's often sometimes, one of the benefits, right?
Absolutely.
We've lost you on the screen, Cynthia, but please do, speak it, chime. Oh, there we are. There we are. There we are. So I got a question for you. So best advice for somebody that's within their organization. I think everyone's kind of hitting it a little bit, but as a recruiter, I often see people leave the company because they want to change. What advice would you give to someone that's looking for a career change, but doesn't necessarily have to leave the company? Like, what do you do? Like, maybe Cynthia, you want to go first with that one?
Yeah, for sure. I think Kristen actually touched a little bit on this, but put your hand up and let them know, hey, I'm here, I'm eager to learn, and I would love to, hit up whichever manager it is that you're kind of like, hey, I'd like to dabble in supply chain a little bit, learn a little bit more about like that. Hey, I want to get more into employee engagement. I want to move away a little bit from the traditional recruitment, or I want to learn more about compensation and benefits. Everyone always needs help. Resources are scarce always. So if there is someone putting their hand up, no one is turning you down. And it's great. It's great not only for you, yourself personally, to grow and gain more exposure, but it shows the company the kind of individual you are, which is key when, things come down further down the lines, for promotions, etc., and leveling up. It's great.
Yeah, and I will kind of jump onto that as well, in the sense of, I think a lot of manufacturing, we are lean in terms of, when it comes to employee base. So again, like Cynthia said, like, if you're putting your hand up, I can guarantee that there, in whatever area that help is needed, or that you'll be able to jump in and get some exposure. So I think that's one thing that's pretty consistent around throughout manufacturing, in food manufacturing as well. So definitely, advocate for yourself, put your hand up, ask your boss just if there is kind of career development. And one thing I would say too, when we think about career development, I know a lot of times people are thinking net new position, like I need a brand new role. Something that we think about is skills development. And I think that's something that's really the kind of way of the future in terms of work is really focusing on skills that you want to develop, as opposed to a net new position, or I'm not seeing career development if I don't see a new title, for example, which I don't think is the case. And I think as we move forward, to the future of ways of working, it's really about the skills that you bring to the table, as opposed to some of the other things.
The next question is really focused on students and grads, and it's the two-parter. So, best advice for students and grads to start their career. Like, how do they stand out when they've got very limited work experience? What sort of things do you look for on the resume? And also, once we've covered that, how do they negotiate salary? Like, what would your advice be? Because oftentimes, and I've experienced this, that their school could be saying, you've done this program, you should be asking for this, and then the employer is like the reality check. And part of what I do with food grads is set those expectations a little bit more realistically. So yeah, Cynthia, maybe you want to go first. What would your advice be to students and grads to students that are looking for co-op and internships, but also brand new grads as well?
Yeah, for sure. I guess how I got myself out there was really showing who I am as a person, and just bringing that charisma to the table. So a little bit trickier now because we're not doing in-person meets. So I highly recommend actually now doing virtual meet and greets and trying to reach out that way. I find, unfortunately, like resumes, cover letters, things like that can look a little cookie cutter. And you guys are going to all more or less look the same. But the reason you guys stand out is for who you are as people and, the cultural fit between yourself and the organization you're applying for. So you really want to find a unique way to stand out and blend those in. So be confident. I think that's really key. And do not let rejections get you down. I've been in your shoes. It is exhausting. And you will receive more rejections, unfortunately, than you will offers of, employment and things like that. And it is hard. It is very difficult to get your foot into the door. But you need to keep on that grind. And you never know when an opportunity is going to pop up. So I'd encourage you guys to just kind of really cast your net and not be afraid to dabble into anything, because you never know where you're going to meet someone, where that conversation might strike, and that's going to be your next in. So that's kind of my advice.
Yeah. Right, Kristen.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm trying to think of what I could say that's a little bit different. And for me and kind of my career and all the various roles I've had, I have actually always known someone. So I've used the relationships that I've had in order to help at least land kind of the first conversation with a hiring manager. So networking for sure. And I think that does kind of still resonate. I know a lot of our hiring managers will refer or flip, or, this is someone who had reached out to me on LinkedIn. I haven't had a chance to get back to them, but they seem tenacious, and they'll just send me the name, right? So that does definitely happen. And yeah, in terms of, if you do have an opportunity, I think one thing that would help you stand out too is, or what I find hiring managers do provide feedback to me, is when someone has really feels a connection to the company. So why are you interested in working for this company? And not just the I've done, I've looked at the first line of the website, but if there is a true connection as to, this is my passion, this is what I see as this organization's values, or these types of things do stand out in conversation. And then to Cynthia's point, with rejection, it's not great, but stick with it. It makes you more resilient. And if you have the opportunity to ask for feedback, definitely do that. I think practice does make perfect. And so if you have the opportunity to do a few interviews, each time you will get better. And like I said, when asking for feedback, I'd be really, if you have the opportunity to really ask, like, what could I do better? What areas of opportunity do I have, as opposed to just general feedback? I find that hiring managers, recruiters, for feedback, it's quite general, but if you can get really specific and ask, what could I have done better? What, something along these lines, I think that would go a long way and would really help as you continue on in the interview process.
It's interesting you mentioned about research, because I think people think it's lip service from a recruiter, like third party, or even just advising people, make sure you do your research on the company. And people often think, well, I'll just, take a look at, like you say, the homepage, and then that's it. And I think you can really tell when someone comes to the table having done their true deep dive. Maybe they've reached out to a few people on LinkedIn. I mean, there's so many great resources.
This is a really good point. Absolutely. That, do the research is one thing. But I think, like you said, I can immediately tell when somebody, like, for example, is really truly passionate about the same things that our organization is. That's fantastic. And maybe there are people who aren't quite as sure about, like, you don't need to be completely passionate and aligned in every single way, but you can definitely tell when somebody who says, oh, I know someone who works there, and this is what they've told me about their the experience, or these types of things that go a little bit deeper than kind of landing on the homepage, for sure.
And I will add one more thing to make sure, especially during interviewing processes, when you're with the hiring manager, be genuine. Be genuine, be true to who you are. Don't answer questions as you expect the recruiter, like what you expect the recruiter wants to hear, because that's not what we want to hear. Pro tip. we want to know you for you. A lot of the times the interview process is to gauge who you are as a person and if you're going to be the right cultural fit. So we want to know the real you, not a manufactured version.
It's interesting, Janice's point, where she said that she spoke to somebody and she just really liked the person, but they weren't the right fit. And I think people forget that even if you're interviewing for one role, if you really make that connection and, you know, there's a genuine, like you say, it's completely real and genuine and honest, they won't forget you. You know, good people are hard to find. So, you know, you don't forget people that you've made that connection with, right?
For sure.
That leads me on to my next question, which is, what would you say that you see candidates do that you would say is like the biggest mistake throughout even like their application, the interview process? You know, I often hear about, you know, I keep calling them and I always say to new grads, you know, well, there's, and job seekers, it doesn't have to be just new grads, you know, there's professional persistence versus stalking, you know, so what would you say are some of the biggest mistakes?
Anything comes to mind?
So a big pet peeve for me, and I've been seeing it recently here and there, is ghosting. Especially like you see it a little bit more in the general labor side roles. But I feel like I've seen it a little recently in professional roles, to the point where things are signed and start dates are around the corner and you follow up with, hey, here's your first day, you know, your checklist, here's what you need. And it's like, ooh, I used your offer as a counter offer and I'm actually just staying where I am. So that's been very frustrating, but ghosting in general has been a trend, I want to say, that I've seen recently that I'm absolutely not a fan of. Things come up, you may get cold feet, you might decide, hey, you know what, I don't want to work in poultry, that's not it for me, or whatever it might be. Call your recruiter, even if it's the day of the interview, an hour before, 10 minutes before, call. Make that call. Make that call, and all you need to say is, I'm sorry, I can't make it, right? It doesn't have to go any deeper than that. But you know, you're obviously free to go deeper than that if that's what you want, but make the call. Yeah.
Kristen, you have anything to add there?
You know, Nicole, kind of what you had mentioned about the follow-up. I actually encourage people to follow up with me because I know my day gets so busy and I want to, you know, close the loop with everybody. So I do give some timeline of, you know, if you don't hear from me by then, feel free to reach out. But like you said, there is definitely a fine line between, you know, I'd like a follow-up, or, you know, what's the next step, and constant. I've had people, you know, on my cell phone, on my WhatsApp, actually, or yes, where I've had to have some like stern conversations. So I would just be careful of that. I think there's definitely a professional way to follow up, and I think it's absolutely totally fine to follow up, and just kind of understanding, you know, from a recruiter or hiring manager, the perspective that they might be in. But I think it's fine, just what the fine line may look like.
It's so true. Even in work, you know, you may need to follow up with someone and, you know, you're thinking, I've reached out 3 times, but you never know what's going on in the other person's world. So it could be a case of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't respond. Or the classic, which happens all the time, is it was in my drafts and I didn't hit send. So I thought I'd responded and I hadn't responded because it's just sat there. So I think there is a way, a professional way to conduct yourself. And it's good practice for students and grads to get used to that and ask for feedback, like you said. Yeah. Is this okay if I reach out? Oh, we have a question here. Is it okay to approach a hiring manager on LinkedIn via chat messaging related to a job application or position?
So I will, kind of my take on it. I would say it is fair to reach out to hiring managers or people at the company. I think with a grain of salt that not everybody will respond. Depends on what some people are just not on LinkedIn that much. They might not see the message, so don't take that as kind of any indication, just a sense that they might not be on LinkedIn all that often. I know that people do reach out to, whether it's a hiring manager or somebody, let's say part of our brand marketing team. And I often find a quick conversation or an exchange does tend to happen. And I think that that's totally fine. Again, it's the fine line of, if that person doesn't respond, that might be kind of the end of the conversation. I wouldn't continue to pester, and I wouldn't necessarily reach out specifically to a hiring manager asking about a specific job application. If you were reaching out to understand more about the organization, to learn an information conversation, I think that's fair. But I wouldn't necessarily reach out to say, what's the status of my application?
Gotcha. Cynthia, anything to add there?
Yeah, I'd agree with what Kristen said there. What I've seen in some interviews, which I like, and because it shows that the person has an interest in your company. Let's say I'm hiring a quality insurance technician. They've looked at LinkedIn and reached out to other quality assurance technicians and asked them, hey, how's it like being on your team? Or what's the day-to-day like? Just some pre questions about the organization. And that I feel like shows great initiative on an applicant's part. So I appreciate that. But as Kristen said, no, I wouldn't ask about your job application status in particular.
LinkedIn's a great place to network, but keep the two somewhat separate. That's a good segue too. I think every school tells their new grads to create a LinkedIn account. I know I live on LinkedIn, and I think as a recruiter, like, it's the place to be. It's the professional network. So, what's your take and your advice on, LinkedIn, but then segue into social media? I've noticed as I've been working the last little while and making placements with candidates into more mid and senior level roles, it's definitely appearing now that there will be a social media review, or I don't know exactly what tools are out there. I don't know all the different tools. I don't myself do it, but I know that that's sort of in a line where it used to be just reference checking. There is that piece too. So maybe Cynthia, you want to go first, talk about a little bit about social media, and do you check should they get rid of their party pictures and all this stuff?
We don't exclusively have anything in our recruitment that says check this person's social media, or you can go to look for it. There's nothing in there. I will say sometimes a manager, like, if we're hiring a supervisor or something, we might just Google search, see if anything, pops up. And, if there's a Facebook page or an Instagram page, we might just open up and take a little scroll, because why not? Just out of curiosity. But our curiosity is more like, oh, okay, they have a family, or like, whatever, just random stuff like that. I don't think we've ever used it to pin someone, use it as a negative against their application process, just as a fun thing. So I don't really have any totally kind of tips there on what to keep off social media and not. We don't religiously check.
Okay.
I would say the same. I know, some of the hiring managers do, because I'll just give you an example. In Simcoe, it's a small community, people know each other, and so they tend to, sometimes a hiring manager will take a look, does this person kind of know anybody else? But same thing, it's not part of my practice. I will say, in my past recruitment, I did have one experience where social media did play a factor in somebody's offer being rescinded. And so again, that was the company's prerogative, and we kind of worked through it. And it was a tough decision actually for the hiring manager. I didn't pull up the profile, but she did find the person on Facebook, did see some posts that she felt were not aligned with the company's values. And again, it was a tough one for her. She did go back and forth, and ultimately she said, it's based on this is not someone that we feel is aligned and that we're going to move forward with. So that was a tough one. That was a really tough one. It was a young individual who, I don't know if it was his first job out of school, but early career. And I think for him, it was a huge lesson. It really opened his eyes, and by no means, it was from years and years ago. And I didn't even know that was there. And so I would say to do a little bit of a scrub of your social media. It's probably not a bad thing. But yeah, it's not something that we check. That's part of our recruitment process.
Yeah, I mean, it's out there forever. That's the thing. I've got kids. I tell them this stuff. You can be found, right? You see it with celebrities and people that are in the public facing. So certainly, it's easy to find this stuff if people dig, and want to dig. And I think, like to your point, it's not necessarily a tool, but it's part of it's at your fingertips if you want to, if there's a questionnaire. So it's a good idea to keep things professional if you have or keep your accounts private, right? If you have stuff on there that you don't want people to see. But yeah, Cynthia.
I'm sorry, I will say one thing we do is we do check activism because we are poultry. So meat and poultry, I know a lot of it what would be standard is to check animal activism. Especially if you're general labor and you're going to be on the floor, that is something that we do screen for. So
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I've got probably another 10 questions, but it is 5 o'clock and I want to be cognizant because I know you ladies are singing from the same choir sheet as me in terms of recruitment right now. So I know your life is super busy. So I'm going to let you go, but I can't thank you enough for joining us today. Without people like yourself coming and talking to students and grads and job seekers and putting the perception out there of the industry as well, which we so greatly need right now, we couldn't do these types of things. So thank you so much. And you'll see the video. We obviously send it to people that weren't able to join. We thank everyone that did join us today and have a great evening.